Hello, welcome to another devlog for my 2D space game. We have a car inside the building zone. The main body here is a battery and it has 500 power. We have a battery attached to the zone modules up there that has 10,000 power. And there's currently no way to transfer this power into the car. We have it somewhat implemented. For example, in the storage here we have 150 iron and this wheel is worth 52 iron. But if I were to resize the wheel, then we use up the iron in the storage. But same thing there, if we had a storage on our car, there's no way to transfer it on demand. And this is a tricky problem. I want it to be intuitive and you gotta be able to decide exactly how much you put where. So one way to move the power would be to click and drag this power, and then when you do that, all the targetable shapes light up, and then you drop it there, and then a slider appears, and then you can decide how much to move. So I think that's one good option, but then there should also be a button here that says fill up. And then it's gonna take resources from anything that's connected to fill up whatever goes into that storage. So for a battery, it's gonna be power only. And then the opposite button is gonna be distribute. So if I click distribute here, it's gonna get rid of this power. And then I wanna make it support, so like if we have two batteries here, they're attached or whatever, this one's empty. But then if I empty this one, distribute, it might go into this battery. But if we were to select both of them, first of all, we should see the combined resources. But then clicking distribute now, it should move the resources to any shapes that's not selected. And then you should also be able to let's delete all of this. And then in here, in the storage, we now have both iron and power, because this can store anything right now. So there should be the one button that's distribute right there. But then if you click the storage or something, you would go into submenu and there you would have a button for each resource. And then each resource also has a distribute and fill up option. And same thing here, if it's a lot of things, you should be able to click and drag this to like this battery. And it should move everything that's possible over to that one. So that would be the power in this case, because the battery can only store power. So I got the issue written up here in the private GitHub repo. So I want to focus on the core idea. This idea of moving resources by click dragging is a bonus. So initially I just want to have those buttons to fill and distribute. But I also want this concept of priorities. Because imagine we have a rocket with a fuel tank and then another fuel tank. So then we should be able to say that for the top fuel tank, we want the output to be a higher priority than the lower one, so that we keep the center of gravity closer to the thruster. Because same as for the car, activating the thruster consumes the resource. So for the car, the gyroscope action, turning, costs power, and that drains from any connected chip, which is only the battery. But if we have multiple batteries, we want to be able to say which battery, and that would be the priorities. And that would also be used when we click distribute and fill up. So let's start with this. Starting off with cleaning up the menus. We can now left click outside to get rid of the menu. We can also click escape. Before you used to be able to open the main menu when this was open, but no more. Works like that. Very nice. I've cleaned up the options here. If I turn on God mode, we get all those options. Turning off God mode, we can see we have more options if the shape is interactable. We have the delete options there. Here we don't. Same with there. And we can select things while the context menu is open. Then left clicking outside, it's first gonna leave the menu, and then left clicking again. We get the selection reset. Maybe it should be the opposite way so that we deselect first. But if it's open and you want to deselect, you can just hold control click. I don't know. I think this could be fine. And to automatically close any shown menus, we just keep track of all the open menus. Keep a set here on the class of the menu. And then whenever we open, we add it to the set. Whenever we close, we remove it. And then we just gotta iterate them, make sure they are the shown submenu, because sometimes it could be inside a top menu. And then we have a convenience method that just closes the first shown menu. And if there is a none, it returns false. And then we can use this here when we click on nothing, and we use it here when we click escape. Then if there's nothing to close, then we open the main menu. Very clean. I did notice one interesting issue. So when I open the modules, you see the car jitters a bit. It's a tiny bit, but it's because it requires some processing time to open up the menu and load all the modules. But then for the next physics step, since a bit more time has passed, it takes a bigger physics step to catch up, so that time doesn't change based on FPS. But that's gonna be an issue, because if like you have a lag spike, then everything is gonna jitter. So maybe it needs to be able to slow down. So I'm thinking if you set the FPS target speed, if you set it to 200 FPS, but then you're only getting 100 FPS, then perhaps we'll let the game run at 50% speed. And then vice versa if you... Or no, you can't do vice versa. You can't speed up the game because you're never going to get more frames than you ask for. So the game could only slow down. Okay, I think that's a good solution. So in the app class, we define what FPS we want and what delta we're striving for. But then in the view class, we update that on every frame or every update, I guess. And we calculate the FPS, that's still useful. But let's just comment out this one so we keep the delta at whatever the app sets. And this should remove those jitters. Like, because I've been so annoyed by those jitters and a bit worried, to be honest. Haven't been sure how to fix them, but now it must be this. So let's open the menu. Yeah, no jitter at all. So perhaps let's turn on God mode. If we make this fall and I open the menu, then we should see it slow down a little bit maybe. Yeah, but that's good. I think that's what we want, because then it's not going to affect the stability of the simulation. So let's try a worst case scenario here. So let's aim for 1000 FPS. We're only hitting 500. So now it should be moving. Oh, now we only have 100 FPS when I'm lifting it, and I'm going to release it. Yeah, only 100 FPS, and it's moving a tenth of the speed. I think that's good. There's been this one thing bugging me throughout development, and it's how to handle multiple shapes. So I had this method to like delete the selection, right? But then I also have another method to delete an entire rig, which is shapes connected through joints. And the thing is, I'll have all these different collection of shapes. But then I've been implementing methods for each unique shape collection. And I just realized I can do this. I just inherit from set, and then we have a shape set and a body set and whatever else I want. And then here is where we put that logic, and then we can even have convenience methods to convert between these. So now instead of having selection delete, I just call selected shapes and then the delete method there. So I'm sad I didn't realize this earlier because it's gonna require changing a lot of the code, but the beauty of this is that it's just a drop-in replacement. It doesn't change anything. It's only an addition of features. So I can do this sporadically if I want to. But this is awesome. I think this is gonna help clean up the code, keep it more concise and keeping the logic in single places. I cleaned up the pivot creation. So when we select two shapes and then right click, we can create a pivot joint. So now it's not gonna let us create a new pivot joint there. I have this temporary message function that just prints a message for now, but these two bodies already have a joint. And we can no longer create pivot joints with stuff that we can't control. So I can't attach it to the wall, for example, and deleting there only deletes the car still. And creating a pivot joint between these two, we just select both of them, create pivot joint, and then I also added so we can click escape to cancel there now, and then that works nicely. If we even have a menu up like this, we can click escape once to close that, click escape again, and that closes the pivot creation. But then we can pivot like that maybe. Let's see, let's turn on God mode, and seems to work good. Yeah, I'm really liking this new idea of the custom sets. So now using that in the menu, I have removed the discrepancies between a context menu for a single shape compared to a context menu for a selection of shapes. So it's now all based on a shape set. So if you right click a selected shape, then the shapes become all the selected shapes. Otherwise, it's only the shape we right click. So you're allowed to right click a shape you haven't selected. I think that's going to be useful. But here, instead of iterating all the modules and actions and calling their menu methods, which I've now deleted and cleaned up, very nice, we have this. So this one is once again based on the shape set, where we just combine all the worth of the selected shapes and all the storage of the selected shapes. And let's see it in action. So we have our wheel there. That's worth the 52 iron. And if we select both of these, we have their combined value. We have the battery up here with 10,000 power. We have the battery down here with 500. And selecting both of them, we get the combined. And then over here, we have that iron. Adding that one, we can see everything. So we see 3 shapes, 2 bodies. So like we can, we can go crazy. 15 shapes, 4 bodies. That's really cool. So now this is what I want to base the transferring functionality. We can now click a storage's resource like this, and then it lights up all the paths that that resource can take. And I noticed, like for the car here, when it's in the zone, it connects to everything, but it doesn't connect to the battery. And that's, I realized, because it's not touching. So I have an issue with my move to contact when outside. And I believe it has something to do with the normals. So we have an arbitrary shape here and an arbitrary shape here. Then we're going to have the center position. And then what I do is I query both of the centers. So when I query this one, it then returns the closest point on this shape, which is going to be here. And I then query this point, and it returns the closest point, which is here. And then I look at these 2 points, and then I just move either of the bodies so that these points are on top of each other, plus an overlap. And it works fine if the normals align with the directions, but sometimes... Hello. Bye. It's gonna look like this, like we often have squares. So then the closest point is gonna be there, and then the closest point from this is gonna be there. But then sometimes it's gonna look like this, so the closest point on this shape to there is gonna be there, and the closest point on this shape to this point is gonna be in the middle. So I was thinking it was gonna have to do with the normals of where the surface is hitting, but that's not the case. I think I'm just gonna have to bounce it back and forth. So now the next time we check the closest point on this shape to this point, and that's going to be there. And the closest point on this body for this point is in the same place. Then if they return the same place, maybe we know we're there. Yeah, let's try that, I think. It turns out that wasn't quite enough, but I implemented a little loop so that we can decide how many times we want to jump back and forth. This is not a function I use very often. It's only for building these one-time structures and such. I don't know. It doesn't have to be too optimized. But this is fine. We jump back and forth. We iterate those in pairs. And then I updated this. So before I would just add some overlap in the same direction of the 2 points, like these 2. But now, since we iterate the body last, and then that's what the query value is going to be. So we use the gradient of that shape. So here, if we were to move the small one, then we use the gradient of this surface. And then that's the axis that we move this shape, the overlap amount. And that seems to have fixed it. So now the battery actually connects. We can see when we check its power, it connects to all these things. I believe it should also connect to the car. No, right, it doesn't connect to the car because it's not focused. Now it does. Nice. The zone wasn't active because it wasn't focused. Cool, so that all connects. Let's check out this power. That all connects. So now let's actually play here, and zone modules currently pass through control as well. So I can control the car here, even though it's not focused. Like, if I focus it, we can drive it. And now we can even leave and drive. Oh, I ran out of power. So we're actually using up the battery in the top here now. Pretty fun. Since the traversing is depth first, it's not gonna get the closest one all the time. Maybe I should make it breadth first, but I don't know. It's probably fine. So yeah, very cool. We used up the power there, but now let's focus this instead. That's gonna turn off the connection to the zone. And oh, we're actually out of power, so we can't move it all now. Then if I activate the zone again, we can move and use up there. So now I want to get this. Oh, cool. Let me turn on God mode here. I want to check something. Let's elevate the car like this. And now, okay, so that's why we can control it. Right. Yeah, we can only control the left wheel because that's entirely inside the zone. But we're not checking the entire rig when we determine if it's controllable there. Which is wrong. I think it should check the whole rig, but that explains that part. All right, let's see if the deleting works now. Okay, it does. Well, that one didn't have anything in it. This one has 52 iron. That doesn't work. Why is that, I wonder? Okay. So it doesn't connect. This one doesn't have any iron output. So when it comes to iron here, it's not traversing at all. The gyroscope doesn't have an iron output. But when you go to the zone, it should automatically connect, even regardless of the output. It's not the prettiest solution, but I think it might work. So now when we traverse and before we stop the branch, either because we're inside it and we can't get out, or because we cannot pass through it, we check the zone. And the zone is only checked once. Once we go into here, then we don't go again. Because I didn't want to put it before potentially yielding the shape, because then we're gonna yield them in a weird order. Well, let's try it out. So what are we testing now? I forget. Right, we want to see if this iron can reach all the shapes in the zone. They still don't. Okay, so let's try deleting a wheel though. Okay, so that works. And that puts it in there. No, I guess that makes sense. It's only gonna go from the wheel to there. So if I could click the iron there, I only create the buttons for stored resources, not worth resources. Like this shape is worth 52. It's not a resource that we can transfer. It's locked to the shape. That's cool. So, oh, so that means now we should be able to resize again. Hell yeah. And then that changes the value there. We can see the stored iron when we change it there, and we can even go into the stored iron submenu, and that updates as well. Very nice. And then deleting this battery. Well, let's check this first. Yeah, that connects to everything. Beautiful. And then we delete this, and that should put that power in there. All right. So I think it's pretty good. So now I want to get this working. So when we click empty storage here on the car's battery, I'm going to get that 500 power into this battery up there. It currently has 10,000. And clicking it now, we do get the 500 extra there, but we don't remove it there. So this is a good opportunity to show you the new transfer config and also the traverse config. Traverse config lives inside the transfer config, because sometimes it's enough to traverse without transferring. This is a system and a half, let me tell you. So what's missing here is the target collection. Oh, and that should change with every right there. So we can actually just set it down there. Target collection is collection. Because sometimes we have a collection, like the cost of running the gyroscope is 1 power every tick, but that just consumes it from wherever it's connected. We don't need to add it to anywhere, it just disappears. But sometimes when we transfer, we actually need to keep the balance. So now let's see if the power disappears from here. It does. Very nice. Let's try to go the other way. Cool. The volume should be working, but I'm guessing that the power doesn't take a lot of volume at the moment. So why don't we check out the volume for power right there. So let's change this to a bit of a more interesting number, 0.3 maybe. And now filling this up, we have 3000 as the max there. And then we can try to empty it back. Doesn't work. How is that possible? So I tracked down why it wasn't working. I was filling the resource collections past their volume point, and then I was getting negative numbers. But now I catch that, and I can adjust things here temporarily, because I was just forcing 10,000 into there, but the limit is 3,000 or whatever. So just reducing that, and now this should be working. So we can empty these 2000 power down into there, 2500 there now. This is empty. We can empty it back. Now it's up there. You can see how it all connects. And if we turn off the zone, we can see it doesn't connect to the shapes in there anymore. Also, power doesn't connect into the storage, but it can pass through it. So I'd like to color that differently, going inside compared to going through. And then also a different color yet again if there is some power there. All right, we are getting there. This is unfathomably complicated, but oh my. So we can now empty this storage, 500 power, and that went into there. We can empty this storage. It goes back into there. Let's empty that again. So this is empty, and then we fill this storage. Here is the issue I ran into. We're getting iron. Even though this module does not have an iron input, like it's a battery, it should only have power. The fix I made previously to make sure that we can resize shapes, for example, these gyroscopes that cost iron, but they don't have an iron input, but this still works. And that's because I'm connecting all the shapes in here directly to the zone modules, regardless of the IOs. But then that causes a problem when we request things here within the battery, because this is the new fill storage method. And here I'm just going through all the possible resources and requesting all of them. And I thought the filters would automatically stop it, but since we have that special rule, we should make sure to only request resources that can actually go into the thing. Extracted this method allowed in from the resource filter, which is used in the pass-through, input, and yield and output filter. It's used everywhere in the traverse config. And with that one, we can now say something like this. So when we have both the shape and the potential resource, we check if this resource is allowed in the input of that shape's module to be exact. And if it isn't, we skip this. Let's see if this works. So now fill storage, nice, only power. Empty storage, puts it into there. How about now fill storage here? We can't get any power into there. Oh, okay, that's because I only allow iron inside the storage module. But let's just change that to any resource. So now if we go here and we fill storage, oh, alright, I think I fixed that bug. So now when we open up the storage here and we try to fill this one, and now we can store any resource, we get 150 iron and 2000 power. Well, the iron was already there. And then I think it's working somewhat. If we empty this storage now with this power, we put it all into the battery maybe, then that has 600. Let's fill it again, and then it's moved back to there. Let's empty this battery at the top there. Nice. That went into this one, because this one should be full. Maybe a bit easier when I write how much of the volume capacity is actually filled. It's nice. We can see the iron connection, power connections, empty storage. Make that bigger. Use up most of the iron. Let's delete this wheel. It goes into there. Empty this storage. That goes into there and there. Beautiful. And then let's fill this one. Okay, so this is where it fails. So do I have to fill it again now? Okay, cool. So almost there. I would have liked it to get everything there. That's pretty good progress though. I'm very happy with this. Super cool. I think that's a good spot to end this episode. Thank you for watching.